Benny Johnson, podcaster who was invited to sit in at the press briefing where Caroline Levitt pat him on his head and said, "Good job, Benny." He, I guess on that same day, broadcast his show from some White House podcasting room, and he went with the normal standard procedure of blatant and extreme racism for this MAGA party and their plans for this country.
President Trump is doing God's work by refederalizing D.C. By the way, D.C. was set up as a federal city. It's in the Constitution. It's how our founding fathers intended it. What happened to D.C., especially during the civil rights period, was that protesters that were bussed up here stayed here. The city was burned to the ground. This happened during massive riots throughout the 60s and 70s. Mass swaths of the city were torched and were never really rebuilt. And so what President Trump is doing is reasserting control of not only our nation's capital, but truly the seat of Western civilization.
Benny Johnson is talking about what D.C. used to be and the vision that MAGA wants it to be. The problem that he has with what happened with D.C. is that people that he wouldn't specify because we know who he's talking about were bussed up to D.C. and they never left. And since then, they've been destroying his great capital that is the bastion of whiteness. And they had riots. Didn't explain what those riots were over, but it was definitely during the civil rights era. I wonder what the riots were about. It's about more equality. It's about freedom. It's about rights, the things that they're suppressing right now.
Washington, D.C. is a representation of the work of your forefathers and mine. It is, by every measure, a very beautiful city architecturally. It is a sacred city. It is a sovereign place with the monuments to great men and women who've sacrificed far more than you or I could ever dream for this country. It must be preserved because the peoples of Earth come here by the millions per year in order to witness the success or failures of our systems. And if you are a proud patriot and you love this country and you wish for it to be reflected honorably to the peoples of Earth, then Washington, D.C. must be swept clean.
Washington, D.C. must be swept clean. What you guys hear some more of those dog whistles that were not dog whistles at all. We hear them loud and clear. If you're a proud patriot that loves this country and want to reflect it honorably, because his forefathers and mine, as he said, had this a certain way, and it's since been changed. That's him indicting the forefathers, the way that many people that point out how our forefathers, the folks who started this country, were slave owners, and they didn't consider other humans that they owned to be full human beings. So as people, as they call out bashing the forefathers, this is what he wants it to return to. He already pointed out that people were bussed up during the civil rights era, which is something that they always said that there's equality in this country. Apparently, that's not what they want. Let's get very, very extremely explicit.
I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed. I believe that there are places that are so crime-ridden and so infested that you just need to, you're just going to have to crack down. You're going to have to do the job, and you're going to have to get the crime out of Washington. That's my personal experience. Don't believe the bullshit that you hear online from some reporters. Oh, crime's down in D.C. Well, my infant nearly died in a drug fire after mass shootings. So no, D.C. is not safe. And I can tell you this, as a matter of fact, it is one of the worst, most racist narco states and welfare states imaginable. In that neighborhood that I would walk every single day, racial epithets were screamed at us, rocks were thrown at us because we were white people. This city is a sunken place. It is an unsafe place. I mean, if that's what happens to me, imagine what happens to somebody who's visiting here from a foreign country. Right? It's totally and wholly unsafe and a scar on the face of our country. And it must be healed. And President Trump is going about that heavy work.
He needs entire neighborhoods cleared and cleansed of the issue that's a plague on his clean, white, lily white city that was supposed to be what the forefathers first saw. What he's experienced is mass crime. Let's not forget. This is why they want people to forget the way that racial discrimination was implemented, the way that they posed people as dangerous, always crime-ridden, and welfare states. He used all of the taglines. These are not dog whistles. What Benny Johnson is saying is there's too many black people in this city. We have to cleanse it of those black people because they're drug riddled, they're criminals, and they're here to kill you. Also, it's a racist narco state. And there's racial epithets that were screamed at white people. I thought racism didn't exist. I also thought that there's no color. We don't see color. There's no color seen in this country, but for some reason, it's the oppressed folks, the disenfranchised folks, the people whose rights are being taken away, the folks who are being stripped from any kind of history as this president sits in the White House right now. It's those people that are the problem. That's the scary part of America. In order to have this fear state of having to cleanse DC of the plague, you have to flip reality on its head and say that the white folks are under attack. And that's why Benny Johnson was invited to the White House yesterday to continue to implement and make what he's saying normal. In case you guys forgot that this isn't just some podcaster on his network spewing racial shit. He was invited to the White House to make himself look like a normal person.
As a DC resident of 15 years, I lived on Capitol Hill. I witnessed so many muggings and so much theft. I lost track. I was carjacked. I have murders on my Ring camera and mass shootings. I witnessed a woman on my block get held up at gunpoint for $20, and my house was set ablaze in an arson with my infant child inside. And so to any reporter that says and lies that DC is a safe place to live and work, let me just say this. Thank you.
That's the normalization of Benny Johnson. And so the same day, he goes and starts talking about all that. I don't want you to forget what else Benny Johnson is also about. Just a year ago, it's the beginning of September of 2024, there was that Department of Justice indictment. This is details from this indictment that was put forward that showed how Russians were controlling people to say the types of things that Benny Johnson likes to say. There was a media startup from reactionary luminaries. These are some of the folks in it. Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, and others secretly received funding from Russia, is what that federal indictment alleges. The Department of Justice charged 2 employees of Russia today with violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, saying they participated in a $10 million scheme to create and distribute content to U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging. The press release from the DOJ says that Russian state broadcaster RT orchestrated a massive scheme to influence the American public by secretly planting and financing a content creation company on U.S. soil. They went along with that deal because it was worth millions and millions of dollars to them. So as this whole thing blew up, you saw a couple of those names, Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, that same Benny Johnson who's now talking about cleansing Washington, D.C. of black people because black people are a plague on this country because they're crime-ridden, they're drug-addled, and they're also just leeches on our society because they're welfare queens. That's what Benny Johnson's talking about. So in response to this is what he said at the time. A year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyers negotiated a standard arm's length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed, by the allegations of today's indictment, which made clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. And my lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise. So because you don't know that you're a sucker and an agent for Russians, you don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to know you're piggybacking the same types of things that they want said in this country that cause more division, hate, and violence, which as far as right now in the middle of 2025, there's hate, division, and violence carried out by the people that you are supporting by going up in the White House and talking about how you had all these instances of crime happening on your Ring door cam. And then that same day going and talking about how we need to cleanse our city of American citizens.